Here's your news for April 3rd, 2020. We're kicking off today with news from AEW. As well, the company moved their TV tapings from Jacksonville, Florida to an undisclosed location to avoid fans gathering in the same area. They weren't expecting a visit from the police. Wrestling Inc. is reporting that Georgia authorities showed up at the gym of QT Marshall in Norcross, Georgia, and after discovering this was AEW's undisclosed location, were unsuccessful in shutting the show down as AEW had all the right paperwork, though stayed through the entire filming. State officials still stayed throughout the entire filming to make sure that guidelines were followed. As of today, the state of Georgia is under a stay-at-home order which will run until April 13th, though it's been reported that AEW has enough filmed to last until mid-May. This situation is very similar to WWE, who filmed as much as they could before Orange County, Florida issued a 2-week stay-at-home order. Now, the entire state of Florida is under a stay-at-home order for another month, and that could cause a big issue for WWE, who only have footage filmed until next week's NXT. During Wrestling Observer Radio, Dave Meltzer commented on the situation, saying, "They're fine until the 8th. So they've got Friday's SmackDown, Monday's Raw, and Wednesday's NXT, so that's all done. Then after that, they gotta find a place for April 10th. Connecticut's shut down too, so it's not like they can go there. I mean, in theory, they might not be able to go to their office and do wraparounds. I'm sure they will, but based on what we're told, I mean, you're not supposed to go to work unless you're an essential service, and going to do wraparounds in the studio, I guess you could have people do it from home, I suppose that's possible." That's another thing that them and AEW and UFC all have to figure out, is what's the move for next week, and then what's the move for the week after. WWE doesn't have an off-season, and we doubt Vince McMahon will let the current global situation stop him from trying to release original content each week. Though WWE has plans to film at their Performance Center next Friday, the Florida stay-at-home order might be a huge obstacle for the company, though if they can be classed as an essential service, they'll be allowed to continue. McMahon's company certainly has the financial means to film wherever they're allowed, and while it might take a lot of effort, the show should still be able to go on. Time will tell what the future holds for companies like AEW and WWE, and we can only hope that a month inside will help get the world back to normal sooner rather than later. We've got some positive news from WWE now, as after lots of changes to the WrestleMania card and rumors of stars being infected, Dave Meltzer reports that no tests came back positive. Though Meltzer didn't specify who or how many stars were tested, this is still huge news for WWE, after Dana Brooke was ill in quarantine, leading to her removal from the SmackDown Women's Championship match at WrestleMania. The fitness enthusiast isn't the only superstar under the weather, as when The Miz reported feeling ill, he was told he couldn't perform, while both Rey Mysterio and Murphy were also reportedly ill, forcing them to miss the Mania tapings. Bobby Lashley is still expected to face Aleister Black at WrestleMania despite being quarantined after a trip to South Africa, and while Stephanie McMahon has said some may consider WWE's procedure to be overkill, it's good to see nobody is taking any chances. One match fans may not see at WrestleMania is Elias vs. King Corbin, as last week's SmackDown saw the former 24/7 champion fall from a great height after being pushed off by the Lone Wolf. WWE released a statement on their official Twitter account stating Elias' situation. Elias' status remains uncertain for his WrestleMania match against King Corbin after last Friday's brutal fall on SmackDown. As Elias performed from the perch of the WWE Performance Center, Corbin viciously blindsided him and kicked the songbird from the railing, resulting in a brutal fall. Stay tuned to WWE digital platforms as the story develops heading into the show of shows. On Twitter, Elias responded to the statement and his condition after the attack, saying, "I'm a lucky man, but I don't know if I'm going to be allowed to compete at WrestleMania." While this could be just part of their storyline, it's also possible that Elias is one of the names pulled from WrestleMania for real, and hopefully fans will get some answers tonight on the final SmackDown before WrestleMania. Though WrestleMania is this weekend, wrestling fans are already looking ahead to the next WWE pay-per-view, Money in the Bank, though it looks like they'll have to wait longer than expected. According to WrestleVotes, the show, which was scheduled for May 9th in Baltimore, will not happen as scheduled, and there's currently no information on where or when the pay-per-view will take place. It was reported just a day or two ago that the WWE was considering Money in the Bank for their Hall of Fame location, and this just goes to show how quickly the situation can change. We are looking once again at WrestleMania now, as while we know that this year's show will be a 2-day event, we don't know what matches will air on Saturday or Sunday. Though there's been plenty of speculation by both fans and pay-per-view providers, it doesn't look like we'll know until the Saturday show airs. And according to Dave Meltzer on Wrestling Observer Radio, even WWE doesn't know when the matches will air. According to Meltzer, the WWE is going to organize the shows based on the star power of each match, and the idea is that WWE wants both nights to be equally exciting with the footage they have. While WWE have already taped the shows, they didn't do so in order, and as of right now, the company are editing the matches, putting in special effects, and timing things out to make the best possible show, despite the circumstances. Meltzer added that he was told the company would figure out the match order within the next 48 hours, so fans can prepare for an exciting and unique pay-per-view experience this weekend. We've got some news from Chris Jericho now, as though the former AEW World Champion has undergone several reinventions over the years, not everything pitched has made it to screens. While speaking to Brody Lee on the latest edition of Talk is Jericho, Y2J explained one time when his ideas fell on deaf ears, all because Vince McMahon was more concerned about his steak. He said, "I had one of the greatest ideas I had ever come up with. It actually involved the Wyatt family for SummerSlam with Shawn Michaels. I had it all plotted out. Vince, when I pitched it to him, was eating a steak. I had asked 3 different people, has he eaten already? Yes. As soon as I got in there, he was extra hungry that day and started eating his second meal. He was not paying attention to anything. I gave him the whole thing. Silence. He just looks at me and goes, 'Bad cow.' What? Bad cow. This steak is tough. What about my great idea? What else you got? I should have known," recalled Jericho on Talk is Jericho. This wasn't the only time McMahon was more distracted with something else, as Brody Lee gave his own story about when he spoke to Vince about the Bludgeon Brothers ring gear, all while the boss was receiving a massage. In that same interview, Jericho also revealed that though McMahon had offered a counter deal to cause him to leave AEW, he refused and accepted that his current actions in alignment with the relatively startup promotion may mean he may not make it to the WWE Hall of Fame. Given his achievements, it's unlikely that WWE would keep them out of their Hall of Fame, as several controversial stars have been included, and though Jericho and WWE aren't on the best terms right now, that could easily change in the coming years. From one former world champion to another now, as Roman Reigns won't be appearing at WrestleMania this weekend, and while there's a lot to this story, WWE seems to be letting the big dog take the heat for it. The Wrestling Observer newsletter provided all the details currently known about the story, saying that Reigns was ready to wrestle at the Mania tapings, and it was when Miz showed up and felt sick that the big dog was flagged as a risk by the company. Afterwards, the Usos and Roman talked about things, and while it's unclear who urged Roman to pull out of the show, the big dog ultimately made the decision for himself. This account of things is much different to what WWE have reported, as they've claimed that Roman flagged himself as a risk, and rather than take credit for making a responsible call, the company is letting the big dog take the heat. The report reads, "The Usos, who were to face Miz and Reigns, talked about it, and whether they talked him into it or he came to the conclusion on his own, he flagged himself. And the company also let him take the heat for it, rather than taking the responsibility publicly, even if they didn't actually make the call." This will mark the first time Reigns hasn't been on the WrestleMania card since he joined the main roster with the Shield in November 2012, and nobody can blame the big dog for not wanting to risk his health or for being annoyed at WWE for their reporting of what went down. One person who is ready to support Roman is The Big Show, who has criticized those who have branded the former Universal Champion selfish. In an interview, Show said, "It's an almost ignorant point of view. Roman Reigns has had his battles with leukemia. This is an illness that, on his own he has fought, repressed, and got into a remission. This guy's literally got his life in his hands, and he's also got 2 new kids who are extremely vulnerable." Elaborating, Show said it must have been a very difficult decision for Roman to withdraw from his Universal Championship match, and it's clear that the big dog is thinking long-term about his career, as well as his own health and the health of his family. This viewpoint has been shared by several members of WWE, as Stephanie McMahon also commented on the big dog's situation, saying, "We absolutely support all of our superstars and their decision of whether or not to perform, especially at this time." In that same interview with ESPN, McMahon spoke about the measures put in place, saying that nobody is allowed in the Performance Center if they have a temperature of 100.4, if they've been out of the country, or if they've been in touch with someone who's been out of the country. She added, "We also do pandemic-level cleaning, which includes fogging and ultraviolet light in the facility every single night. That could be overkill, quite frankly, but we really are trying to put in the best safety practices that we possibly can given the circumstances. Those are some of the measures we are taking, and it is as comprehensive as it can possibly be." It's clear that WWE are taking every precaution to prevent superstars getting sick, and hopefully it won't be long until things go back to normal both for wrestling and the rest of the world. From talking about Stephanie McMahon to her husband Triple H now, and as the King of Kings gains more power inside WWE, he also spoke to ESPN this week about his role. In the interview, the Game said that long before he met his wife, he had a strong interest in working backstage, and was even involved in some creative meetings during the Attitude Era. He added, "My relationship with Steph, I think it's the best thing that ever happened to me from a standpoint of my wife and kids and everything else, so every aspect of my life would be different. But from a business standpoint, I'd like to think I'd be doing the same thing because of the relationship I had with Vince and the creative relationship that we had long before any of that." Nowadays, the Game can be found working backstage in NXT, and he and Stephanie are expected to take over the entire company once Vince McMahon steps down. And finally, we're ending with some quick news, as despite there being no crowd at this year's WrestleMania, that hasn't stopped WWE using all those excess chairs. On the WWE shop website, the company is selling all of the chairs, emblazoned with the poster for the biggest show of the year, as fans will be able to get a seat at the biggest show of the year despite never leaving their own homes. One person fans will get to see this weekend is Brock Lesnar, and while the WWE Champion doesn't appear much on WWE TV, he will be all over ESPN this Sunday, as they will be airing a special block of Lesnar programming from 6 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern. This Brock block will include some of Lesnar's biggest UFC matches, as well as his 2000 NCAA Wrestling Championship win, before fans can tune in at 3 p.m. Eastern for WrestleMania 36. WrestleMania isn't the only big show for WWE this week, as last night saw the return of Total Bellas, and one fan who was watching was Sasha Banks. On Instagram, the boss ditched her blue hair for black to cosplay as the Bellas and strongly suggested her fans tune in for the new season. This could certainly be a big week for the boss, who will be a part of WrestleMania, and time will tell whether she watches next week's episode of Nikki and Brie with the SmackDown Women's Championship.